Well, good afternoon, while we're sitting at this beautiful afternoon of Friday, March 1st. Unbelievable that I hear myself saying March 1st. It's like an achievement of some sort that we're actually closer to spring than we think, and that how delightful. So we're here with the Hello Hello Show on Friday, early afternoon. March 1st, year 2024, here with the Hello Hello Show. My name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air since 1980. Of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Han, and of course, the likes of you, huge amount of individuals that separately and jointly are making it their business to enhance and fortify the concept of public access. Indeed, and rightfully so, that we find ourselves in the midst of that concept that consumes us in a very good way. By saying consuming, I mean constructing and enhancing, and all these constant additions to the original composition. That is, by the way, highly welcomed, and we want to believe that indeed that kind of set the record straight when it comes to. Let me just make sure. Yeah, we have that. Oh yeah, really? And okay, then we actually find ourselves in the midst of that which represents the core, the foundation for the concept that doesn't just happen to thrive on its own behalf or on its own period. It needs help. It needs a little push. As much as we have a privilege to live in a country that has a constitution, but a constitution of such nature that actually it will make it its business to add a little bit of a kick into the equation of that which is should be obvious, obviously, but nothing sophisticated can be completely obvious and simplistic. It needs to take some doing in order to adapt and adhere to and digest and whatnot, all these great, beautiful, delicious things. So I would like to think for more than 1 second that there is a sense of refuge in the source that leads that motion forward, sort of a state of mind, feeling slash feeling, state of mind slash feeling slash state of mind. And that it all leads to a very innocent source of the sort that is uh, doesn't take its time uh, uh, in order to show you its capabilities, and it's always like the moment of astonishment when something happens and you look at the person in front of you and suddenly you realize that you are going to have to admit that the person that stood in front of you is responsible for that which just took place, because otherwise it's just you have to admit that something just happened out of nothing, out of no one. So quickly enough you realize that whom you have underestimated, and it can be also it can be a human being, a person. It can be also just a concept that's kind of standing there with living and operating a system that just happens to have a spirit and a soul, and then that makes it human, regardless of the shape or that it takes upon itself. But as human beings, we know for sure, at least, we don't have to struggle with the idea whether we belong or not, whether the breath that we breathe in and out is responsible for our life period or not, or that whether love is appropriate, good or bad or not. It's just, of course, that's a kind of no-brainer questions. But a real man, a real woman, a real person will want to go through the entire cycle to read all the material, especially that which is pointed out as insignificant. And then after the fact, we always find out that, oh my God, yeah, we just left out the most important warning sign. And we're sitting here being surprised how come everything is kind of falling apart. But for the artist himself and herself, even calamity, or approaching calamity, or calamity, potential calamity that happened to be avoided, delayed, interfered with, presented with obstacles and whatnot. But anything of the above in order to slow down that which might most likely be inevitable, maybe not, but and even if it's a category of inevitability, you can still have a say because it's not over until it's over. And you anyway happen to be involved and busy with creating art. So in 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 more ways than one, you don't have to worry much about anything really. And you got to keep a straight face through the process, and you know that's a condition to maintain your chances to be viable enough to be in the chart of those that are preferred over others. Then you can. And you know what? In this, I usually don't like to associate myself with preferred treatment, even though it feels good. But I don't want to think that I'm kind of taking away from someone else in order to be deserved and to be provided with things that maybe don't belong to me. So you wait maybe long, but you know what? Sometimes you just want to say, well, if it's coming my way, I'm not going to deny it access, and and why should I? And how is it that? But you will try to understand how crucial. Um, and well, and as I upon yes, upon the reflections, upon the reflections that actually part of something incredibly solid, and that incredible, that which is kind of showing a straight face. Showing a face with some meaning, because initially it started with some kind of a attractive character, an attractive potential, because the little bit that you saw and experienced and felt was enough to give you an indication that maybe it's a good idea, that we're good to go. So you cannot summon abruptly and quickly because you want to seize the moment. And you happen to be maybe the lucky guy, the lucky person that happened to be there, and you got granted with more than more, luckily, and so. But then the amount is not important, because once there is a kind of green light, for example, I would never stop and say, well, how much do I have? As long as I have as long as I know that I have just a little bit more than I had just a second before, then I know that at least I have enough time to gather my efforts and my thoughts and all of the above for the sake of it. And then at least if any doing is taking place, they will be completely condensed and enhanced and focused and relentless and promising, and just a defined entity on its own behalf that speaks a language that's kind of very considerate. Because even if you don't understand the language per se, there's kind of a body language accompanying this sensation, and how much it triggers that which is kind of philosophically buried deep in our system, and we know so much about it, but we don't know s- so much about that which make it the thing that we so admire, that we hardly have the ability to define its character, its contents, its vision. But it just feels like you would want to be a part of it. It feels like being a part of it would be something somewhat of a privilege. And there's certain sensations and feelings you don't want to just ignore. You want to just accept it at face value because you know better that in the past you denied it access. Wasn't smart. And we're not talking about losses and gains. We're talking about more uh, f- fairness, dignity, uh, uh, reliability. Oh yeah, definitely. And some history. You know, I had many encounters with many people. They want to tell me about their them being entitled, which I accept with open arms. That concept that people can feel that about themselves and about what they expect from life, from the world, from the surroundings, from the people, from whatever. It's all legitimate, but it's like but when there's a need to put together a summary of that simplicity that you so admire and speak in the name of, a a detailed list that addresses that which is a mystery in the eyes of those who are ready to believe in you and to believe you and therefore believe in you and therefore believe you, and that there will be a sense of warmth and kind of closing in on the concept of that which is comfort and comforting and console and console. I mean, consoling, is that a word even? uh, and just letting it know that you're there. It's like having kids. You put them to sleep. There's so much you want to say to your kid, that, especially at tender ages, that you love, that you're the dad, that you're like the infinity of their needs, and that and everything as far as their existence is concerned is in the realm of uh, of your providing mechanism, desires, capability, planning, will, um, willingness, you know. But there's one thing that nothing can outdo, it can outrun, can out mean, can out. There's like the top of that process of saying, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And once I thought it's a little strange. It's actually strange that I would tell my kid, for example, uh, I'm here. Like if I put you to sleep and you're like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever, and I said, "Don't worry, Papa is here. Papa is not going anywhere." And then there's a lot to be said about that. So what is it? Oh my God! I remember I felt like this is the thing I want to share. This is the thing I want to share. This is the things I want to share with you. These are the things that I want to share with you. A, a blanket addressing, a wet blanket addressing. You throw it, it just covers the territory, and it's just final. And it's just like pleasantly claiming that space, and then it just runs into an operational mode of its own kind, of its own uniqueness. And it's just like amazing. So this is how I want to address the world. I cannot tell the world that I got it covered, that I can that they can depend on me, and also they can expect from me while they're depending on me that I will be able to do so much. And that so much is addressed in details if I wanted to pay attention to details. And that can be very daunting. And but also that the generality of it can be very daunting. But I think as soon as you kind of expose yourself to the amount of information and the wealth of information, that intensity that it spells, it becomes more and more addressable silently vis-a-vis your inner kind of powers, that you're aware of, that you're not aware of, or that you're aware of and cannot put your hand on it, or you cannot find it, you cannot summon it. It shows up, it doesn't show up, but this is good enough because you also don't want that kind of too much interference, too much presence of something that is as powerful as the things that are actually inspiring you and give you direction and hope and aid and support and adding meaning to the what that which is already meaningful, and just so much more in that sense. So we would like to admit to ourselves that the direct results of the meaning and the intentions of that which is taking place in the beginning of the process that we want to, it's in my case it would be like, okay, is it it's even before I was to find myself taken by the rules that are set in that territory that happens to be kind of self-inventing, because it was there, and then suddenly it's just kind of an amount and a half of that which was presented initially, and then there is a magical interpretation of the system itself that kind of interprets itself for its own sake, for its own means of adaptation, and and you can only be um, an observant, maybe I dare say an obstacle of some sort. Uh, but you know better than to leave the scene of magic, as especially as magic unfolds and shows its face and speaks in that language. And you, the more of a kind of level of camaraderie that's taking place, the less effort takes on behalf of any participants, because it's kind of admitting that there's a level of compatibility, and therefore the process goes on. It's not about reinventing yourself. It's on the go, it's in motion, steady as she goes, meaning that we're not going too fast, we're not going too slow, but we are constantly on the go. And that's the kind of the language of the sea, that we are going to go slow or fast, we're going to get there eventually, so we don't really worry about it too much. So why not just while we're at it, enjoy and slow down, take it easy, steady as she goes, we'll reach destination. And then it's like a guaranteed celebration, because you're confident that by not being too eager, you don't trigger too many feelings and sensations unnecessarily in other entities facing you or going alongside you. Yeah, just kind of drawing attention is not always a good idea. I, you know, I would like, if I wanted to draw attention, I would like to have a good reason why I'm drawing attention. But usually, all the reasons that I would use in order to draw attention are not in my on my list. My but coming from this reality is also, helping me maybe understand my level of compatibility when it comes to things that I today would rather not handle, not touch, or not deal with, um, but that they're crucial in the process of growth, especially artistic growth. Artistic growth that actually dictates changes and different happenings as far as energy is concerned in the other kind of territories that make you who you are as an artist, different mediums, if you artistic in more than one dimension, and the introduction to one another. um, like for me, it was really, really, really a no-brainer if you think about it. I started as a writer, like playing the drums in my boarding school. Like, it was this guy there in the 70s, and he was like, wait a sec, it was like a revelation. It was just like unbelievable. In the music room of the boarding school, there was just like some individuals from Russia. I was like with in a boarding school where like so many international languages and everything, whatnot. And then I was like said, "Oh my God, I'm in love, and this acoustic drum set is just like so beautiful. And this guy, who is he? How come he can play the drums like this? What is he playing?" See, these questions, by the way, still remain in my head. When I look at a dancer or the musician nowadays, or composer or director, all this, I usually, they're so capable. They're so pushing the envelope from the first contact, the first instance of contact. It's an abruption of 100%. It's like, and it's just like a sense you think that this is over before it even began, and the power of radiating from the artist that you so instantly worship, literally admire and worship, is telling you, don't worry, I got it. I've done it more than once. um, Sit back, because there's a lot to enjoy, and you realize indeed that is the case. There's so much to enjoy. So they're lifting their legs up in the air and they're just standing still, and the balance is Im- immaculate and impeccably positioned. And it doesn't go anywhere else than the first instance of introduction. It doesn't move, it doesn't try, it doesn't, no effort in place, there's just presence. And you would know if that's what you're talking about. You would know if you have noticed that it is such indeed. The knowing is in the very essence of the ancient placement, so to speak, when we were introduced to this world, obviously. We had that piece of land, a piece of like whatever square that we're sitting on or being on. It's just like good doesn't go anywhere with you all your life. So this is your definition. It's not good. Uh, So, because we live in a world where there are like levels, and there are people with different levels that have different kind of wealth, maybe different. I don't know what to call it. I don't want to overdo it. It's just there are differences. Otherwise, we're gonna be clashing heads because we're all operating on the same channel and going the same speed and in level of intensity, and so that one obviously won't be good. But you want to be able to look like I did, and I saw this drama, and I was like, I don't know what it was. I was 15, 14. It's like, what is this thing? It couldn't have been a human being because it was so uh, drastically different than what you would expect. It's almost like it was mid 70s, and I imagined that 25, 30 years later I heard, and it sounded the same as this young boy in the boarding school and that many years ago that plays in the same fashion that it gave me the same sense of taste and realization that I am in the company of the gifted. So, yeah, do you think I'll let it go to waste? Do you think that these moments, do you think they go to waste? It's not like I coherently decided this is going to stay with me. It's just that I already knew. And I heard this voice in my mind saying, this will stay with me for good. So I didn't sat and thought and exhausted the issue of how is it going to be, and should I get ready to that possibility, and in what shape or form, and how it's going to intertwine with things that or will not happen in the future, in order to tell me, okay, see, this moment is coming back to benefit you. I knew it. Never bothered because I know that I'm going to have to deal with it even when it's really happening. Don't you think it's smarter to wait for it, even though you have like an umbrella of patterns and readiness and scenarios in all the composition of the puzzles you can imagine. Either you put it yourself together yourself, or you just buy it ready. Puzzle of all puzzles. It's like the more complicated and sophisticated you make it, the easier for me it will be to blend, because it's one size fits all. Yes, one size fits all. Yeah, sometimes it works well actually, but then I and then poetry came into the equation. These were two ancient things. So I didn't know much about it, but it was like fascinating. With poetry, it was fascinating, but it was also, I had like this sense of resentment towards. I always made fun of my sister, and I was like 16, 17, and she was already an established poet at age 18. I mean, talking about, I remember the first book she published. Well, my father helped her. My father, it was like a miracle of all miracles that he even took upon himself this journey, this um, project, this task. He just decided he's going to put this book together, and he created that gathering, that opening, that party, inviting 50 people to our house. And he was waiting for everyone to come into the house with a rose and a copy of my sister's book that they had to pay in cash before they even entered the house. Anyway, I mean, he sold 50 books right there, and he gave 50 roses. And he, without speaking, spoke the words of love, and the words of that, the effect of love, and the words of the undeniable, positive, out of this world, delicious effects and results come when it comes to coming to when it comes to speak about these sensations of love, which is all about giving and contributing. So but I always made fun with my sister. I mean, I shouldn't have, and I respected her, but I still respect her, of course. And I used to go to her and say, "What is this poetry? Da da na da na 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 na. I saw you read your poetry, and it's all sounded so artificial." And she said, "What do you know? This is the rhythm. This is like you do Tai Chi, and you don't cannot invent. I mean, you cannot just make things up. You could, but it wouldn't be Tai Chi. But you have to learn the form, work on it, come from within the form. And if you want to go outside the form, start improvising, you're allowed, as long as you come from within that concept of tradition and whatnot." And until one day was a lucky day for me that we had this kind of argument, and I was like ridiculing her a little bit, and we had a serious conversation. And she said, "Okay, if you think you're so smart, let's see you write a poem." And I looked at her, and I don't know why God said, "Go ahead, of course, do it." So I said, "You know what? Okay, I'm going to go into the room." She gave me a pen and a paper, and I'm going to write a poem, and I'm going to go out. And she said, and I said, "But," and then, okay. Anyway, I went into the room and I wrote a couple of poems, I think two or three. It was like a medium-sized poem, and uh, and I came out and I gave it to her. And this is what I mean. You need to have someone in your life for a minute, whether it's a brother, sister, a friend, a neighbor, someone, a stranger, that you go through a moment with him or her concerning something artistic that's involved with something that you did and some reaction from someone. So here my sister sits. And after all these instances where I put it down and ridiculed her, and we got to the moment where she said, "Okay, let's see you write a poem." And then I write 3 poems and I give it to her and she reads it. And she goes, "Haim, what is this? This is beautiful." So I looked at my sister and I thought that this is the most blessed moment, really, at least until that moment that I have experienced. So my sister, the genius to put together the great poet, saying, "This is good stuff, baby." And later, years later, and I still have those poems, and it was more about the fact that I placed metaphors as a subject matter of importance in the and I gave images of animals from the wild, as far as that kind of roughness of state of mind, and what it is that bothers us, and the condition that on many levels of what how life is all about, whatever. But I positioned it in with rhythm and all that, and I had some aphorisms without knowing that I was actually writing aphorisms. Anyway, since then I never stopped writing. I think I wrote since then every day of my life a poem, and I found it instantly important. That means after this interaction with my sister, poetry became something absolutely inseparable and just absolutely vital in my life, and that's how I feel that everyone should feel and have. Write a poem, man. You be a king, a queen. Write a poem. It will make you a queen and a king instantly. There's no denying it. There's no shortchanging that unfoldingness. There's no questioning, belittling, diverting, whatever words you want to add into this equation will be acceptable and okay. It will all work. But So, guess what? Years later, after I have experienced years of writing poetry, not because I thought I would be anything, I just like this was an edition that a good natured addition, constructive, absolutely for sure, in my life. That is just like a given. I don't have to do too much. Just have to have my iPad or my pen or something, and I'm good to go. And then the whole idea of having a drumstick in your hand and knowing that you're a drummer, speaking of drums, of rhythm, speaking of a wonderful sensation of, I don't know, something unique, mysterious is about to show its face. Huh? And you can't wait. And indeed, it's coming and it's just spelling life and growth and that which is has an aspect of eternity evident and accessible, and feeling the power of the before and after in the within, in the process of in the meanwhile, kind of really pumping results that are pretty impressive. And now you're in for life. You have to pay attention. You kind of vowed, you kind of committed without even knowing that this happened. Then you wake up into this reality. Indeed, there's another thing you need to pay attention to, and with an accent. It's just pointed out with an accent, double, triple on it, so that this can be the outer shell, and then you know exactly what's happening inside. It's just like Tai Chi. I remember when I did Tai Chi, I wasn't taught about here's martial arts and here's how you defend yourself or not. It's more images. It's more like they want to direct you to the point where there's a correctness that answers the demands of tradition that wasn't created overnight. It has so much experience and wisdom into it. And that is just like self described, and it's just like also makes sense. When you kind of halfway make it to pay attention, even halfway, kind of even just touch and go, you realize that any engagement of any length of time is plain and simple, is digestible, is kind of agrees with your uh, technically speaking, bodily mechanism. And so here you are one day, finding yourself in front of a canvas. You you go to the art store for a reason that's unknown to you, and you, with a sense of kind of fear almost, look at this canvas that looks pretty big, 30 by 48, almost 3 by 4 feet, and thick stretcher. And it was like, I was just looking at it, entertaining ideas, and I I didn't think I deserved this canvas, and it also scared me a little bit. It was like, if I visioned or imagined a canvas in front of me for any reason in the world, it would be like 22 by 2, whatever. But I was like, and then the guy there that was approaching me, so you're an artist, huh? And I said, yes. I said, I was looking at this canvas. How much is it? It was like 30 years ago, something. And he said something like $75. That was a lot of money. I think that's kind of $200 of today's. And I said, I'd like to purchase it. And I did. And I remember that my car had a disheveled car, and I had to kind of tie it with ropes onto the top of the car. And I drove from, I drove through Stephen Hand's path, 114, made right to go west on Stephen Hand's path, and then make another right to go to Town Lane. Is it Town Lane? Yeah. I think so, from Stephen Henspath. Anyway, so I drive home, and then I arrived at home, and the canvas wasn't on the car. Honest to God, true story. The canvas wasn't there, and then I went back. I said, "What's up? What happened? And if it fell, how come I didn't see it falling?" No matter what I did, I couldn't find it. So I was like, $75. Okay. Following day, I get a phone call from that person who sold it to me because he knew me, had happened to have my phone number. He said, "Guess what? Someone came to the store today, and he said it's one of the farmers in the area that he found this canvas, and he found in his field, in his back field, and he figured that someone must have dropped it, but he figured that it was bought in my place. So he called me, and I realized it's your canvas. Come and get it." Anyway, so what is that to tell me? Absolutely nothing. It's a story. But then I thought it was like, wow, that's what is Mother Nature trying to tell me? I always needed to know because I didn't think that every day something like that will happen to you. You buy a canvas, first time in your life, you go home, the canvas is not there, it falls, you look for it, you don't find it. Some stranger, some farmer calls, said, "I found it." Then the paint store, which you bought it from the day before, calls you and said, "It's here, come pick it up again." So it's the significance that you want to add to it on your own behalf independently. Other than that, more than that, there will never, there's not. And so what is it that so I went to the paint store and I got it and I got it and I took it to, I can't say I could took it to my studio, but then I didn't have a studio. But I had the setup of a studio as a drummer and a setup of a studio as a poet. So that means I'm coming to this territory of zeroness, understanding nothing about the meaning of a brush with the paint and the rules, the culture, what's right, what's wrong. I assume that there can be right and wrong. Just so many other things. So, uh, but I come with incredible knowledge on how to keep a straight face while you're playing the drums with incredible musicians, and you don't happen to be like such a great drummer. And the struggles of the real moment and the live playing, and the struggle with language that you thought you have mastered, but not even close, but still an experience. So I gained some recognition from when I was facing the canvas for the first time, from the canvas that otherwise would have really could have tortured me and tested me even more intensely um, and meticulously or pinpointedly. But I didn't know that I was tested. I didn't know that I was privileged enough to be spared from things that otherwise would like bestow a much greater pressure on me, and maybe I wouldn't have made it even to go through the first stage in order to get where I am today. For that sake, what did I witness there? What did I what did I witness, and through what it is that I was doing, and how I arrived to do what I did, that maybe someday, sooner than I thought, someone would say, "I would like to take this with me home, and I will pay you for this, and I will thank you." And finding out that power resides within that which you create. Forget about how you create, just create, sell, be compensated for, and have someone sent with that creation to his own immediate space and have that on display, and let that play the role of its life. Roll from entity to entity, from mind to mind, from person to person, from place to place, from destiny to destiny, and create its own magic. And this magic happens to be nothing but goodness at its best, if I want to be as cliche as I can. Yes, goodness at its best. And you most likely will never gonna sit around and find yourself contemplating too much or trying to guess or second guess. You're just gonna know to a certain degree that's good enough for you what is the schedule and how do you go about things, and then you keep all of your energy into what's really important. The moment you tackle the instrument, the moment you have to perform, the moment you have to give answers, the moment you have to understand that this is the extension of what you signed up for, because you want to remember yesterday what you said, you want to save the world from its potential misery, you want to help the world feel better about itself, you want to give the world reasons of why it should favor goodness and softness and attention and tolerance and patience and regard and just consideration, and then goodwill, generosity. Yes, yes. And you think you remember yesterday you thought, not only you thought, you preached about how worthwhile it is to make it your business to use this and apply this and utilize this kind of attitude in order to reach that which you claim that it will help you reach. And indeed every time it does. And I don't know how to put it in other words, but let me just check something. And I don't know how otherwise it would be if you were to, I mean, again, I'm standing in front of the canvas and I'm not knowing what's going on other than what I kind of witness, feel, hear, sense, and it's still in its infant stages, and but things kind of happen all the time, a little bit to a lot, strong, weak, fading, clear, it's happening. I felt like already early on that no matter what, at the end of the session, I can feel really bad about myself, really good about myself. But one thing I need to acknowledge is that there were some achievements and they're stored in the department that is at your disposal at any given time. I mean, that's the best part of it, by the way. Tracking down the moment of that reason for you to indulge in the surety that this world is beyond incredible. Okay, how about that? I cannot repeat what I just said now, but I said it. That rejoice, that that imagining life going, look at this guy. The world itself as a self in the sense of the spirit of the body of the world that makes it human on so many levels, that it will encounter you or you will encounter it, yeah, and it will say about you, look at this friggin' person. How exciting. Yes. You remember yesterday you spoke about that. Yesterday you couldn't stop talking and promising that indeed that's a guarantee what would happen if you were to do such and such and such and this and that and this. So yeah, for example, I wouldn't approach you to say you remember you said that yesterday because I already know you remember. But it's just as a gesture of consideration in neighborly manners concerning things that are really important and crucial. And the early stages are always extremely important. What are your chances in achieving something that is kind of far fetched, and you kind of know that your chances to get anywhere that you think you should get are not so incredible, but still you're in the game. You'd like to be in the game with all the chances betting against you and not being there at all. Of course, that's a cliche, yeah, I admit. But okay, we want to describe the situation and its evolutionary process, and that's what it looks like and sounds like. So, yeah, well, I can't tell you my first encounter with trying to paint paintings and forget about being considered as an artist. I was so ashamed of myself. And I'm using really harsh language, okay, but it's not far away from reality. At the early stages, with all the reasons and all the tools that I have and all the cross implementations that I have from two other mediums that can help me establish my identity as an artist, because it just clearly, very early on in the process, showed a face that says, we are in for the long haul. At least that I knew. And it was proven in reality. I was just like a human machine that's just like relentless. And I just like at some point realized I'm better off not interfering with myself. Just let it be. And I let it, and it did wonderful things. And I was just kind of guarding the vessel that knew it was pre-programmed in some weird way, and I don't even recall how and who can program it to begin with. In order to the need for pre-programming will arise, but you don't have to go through that. You just know already the magnitude, the magnitude of that the reactions resulted in by your reactions and actions. And then, of course, it's a no-brainer to learn quickly enough that it's what kind of an attitude took place in order to establish or to achieve this. And immediately you can double it just by making a tiny bit of adjustments, because now you're talking higher levels of operations, and also more crucial, obviously, because every little act on that level can really have an incredible ripple effect scenario. So yeah, suddenly it's you, yourself, and you, and plus two other mediums, and a third in the making. Mm, five mediums together, where every second is a new leader in town, out of five rotating. And for you, it's just uh, a day in the park, a stroll in the park, a walk around the block, just kind of sitting here on this bench and watching the birds making themselves visible. So the words that my sister just like that volunteered, I bet you she didn't know the magnitude of that which she kind of communicated with me. She didn't, because for her it was like she calls it as she sees it. She won't keep to herself and say, "Oh, I'm not going to tell him that this is great because he just put me down for so long, and I'm this, and I don't want him to just kind of start like being really obnoxious with me." No, she called it as she saw it. That was her qualities, due to her qualities as a poet first and foremost. So much tolerance, so much fine understanding of the human condition can be resulted by engage yourself in writing poetry. You know what? Let's see you being a hero and thinking that your poetry suck. Let's see you being brave enough that you write poetry that is as awful as can be written by anyone, but still consider yourself a poet and saying, whatever. I write poetry. And as if really human beings have any kind of high level of tolerance for poetry to begin with. Like you say a few sentences, you recite a few sentences that people are losing you, even those who know about poetry. But that's okay. But if you're trained properly, you know that you are listening the first syllables that come, they actually draw you into the evolutionary process of that rhythmical pattern, and they don't let you go until they complete the cycle. So that in itself already giving you the indication of the magic involved in that new regular routine that suddenly formed and suddenly in the making, and suddenly is kind of making statements that one cannot ignore. And then you see the power that so far you only sensed. You see it becomes visible, yours and that which you encounter, sharing that kind of commonality of strength and understanding evenly and equally of why it's important, of not why, and also of its importance, and therefore you understand why. I'm still sitting in front of that canvas and thinking, well, if I was to think about any other artists, and especially those that you can buy their work by the millions today, if you can only be lucky enough to, or privileged enough to be standing in front of one of them, never mind owning one. But the thought that if you were to own one of these pieces, that you will be able to secure the future of 20 to 30 generations to come in the future without worrying one bit about survival and money and earning, just being whatever they want to be, with one painting of a deserved painter. But of course, you wouldn't think about that. And of course, you wouldn't think about that level of greatness that you're not entitled to think about, because first of all, you're not there, and secondly, I mean, yes, it's nice to dream and all this, but you're in the business of being kind of reasonable when you do your guessing, and you're kind of estimating. Reasonable, be reasonable. Have a hand on the pulse, and then evaluate accordingly and properly. So, still in that moment of observing the canvas, and I wasn't like staring at it and saying, what am I going to paint, and it's white and it's intimidating. Yeah, well, that belongs to the cliche parts, because the one thing, the being a poet and a drummer before I became a painter, is that when I faced that canvas, I can tell you, I heard music, and I knew immediately what I could have done if I was to decide instantly. So that kind of got me off the hook. I didn't belong into the category of those who stare into the black canvas for hours and maybe sometimes days and weeks and nothing happens. It wasn't my cup of tea. I don't belittle anyone that has this kind of blockage or difficulty or whatever it is. I respect that, but I didn't want to be one of those. I wanted to come and work. I didn't want long discussions with options and scenarios, and I didn't want subject matters to be looming above my head to dictate how things are going to begin, if at all they're going to begin, and when they begin, in what velocity or extent, intensity they will. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be the boss, and I didn't want to have a boss on my head. I didn't want to dominate or to lead, and I didn't want anyone to dominate me and lead me. I just wanted to be somewhat in the kind of middle that I will find accurate enough for me, and therefore comfortable, and then create in such a fashion and such a state of mind that at some point, quickly enough, I will create things that will not allow you to be complacent any longer. That means that if you have any thoughts, any plans, any aspirations, any reservations, they will have to come to the light of day instantly once you encounter that which I created. And it will be intentional in a sense, and to the extent of me being able to interfere with your code of conduct. Yeah, pleasantly speaking and very kind of lightly speaking, but still nevertheless participation. And that you wouldn't even know. Well, at some point, if you will be stubborn, you would know, because the involvement will have to be with a little more friction and harsher. But mostly it will be just like, oh, you won't believe it. I had a moment of an awakening, you would say. And yes, indeed you did. We were there. We were that awakening for your own sake. And then you find yourself, wow, on the second level, already preparing to go on the third level. And the stories that you had in your recollection is that it takes years for people to even contemplate that kind of crossing to the second stage. Nevertheless, thinking about the third one. But here, because there is a level of camaraderie, for lack of a better word, kind of partnership. I don't know. I don't want to be too cliche. Mutual participation, maybe more like it. And then you realize that you found a way that you can be great without being many of the things that otherwise you thought you would have to uh, own or have at your disposal. Uh, isn't it incredible, don't you think? You found a way that you can concentrate hard about what is it that can be even 1% out of 100 that can resemble one of the many qualities of those greats that got so much recognition and so much value to their work and so much influence had. 1%. If you can capture that and verify that indeed you have that, then you're in instantly. You cannot not be in, even if it's 1%. Because when it comes to greatness, there's no more greatness than greatness as it is great inside greatness and greatness inside great. It's just like a play of words. The reality is soaked with greatness as soon as you just just slightly touched it with your feet. That's it. You're done. You're soaked with it. And I found it. I found it because I happened to be fortunate enough to think about. I wonder how different would that be if this painter that I appreciate and admire and give respect to, because I saw what he did or she did. It was like, and I still see, wow, point of reference, an instant point of reference these become. But still, they had to go through very trivial stages. They had to go to their studio. They had to open the door. Must have a door, and sometimes maybe the handle won't open, and the key is something, and they will have to struggle with it until they open it. And until they open it, they cannot get in. And then when they do, they go in. And so what do they do? Take off their jacket. It depends if it's hot or cold. Well, if they smoke, they light a cigarette, whatever. They put some music, no music, whatever. Rituals, 5 minute rituals. Let's just say they did whatever rituals. And then here you go. They're going to the canvas. Something they left from yesterday. Something new that they started. Something new that they're about to start. If they work on more than one piece at the same time, there would be easels and things and all that. So then what will they do? What will they do? What will they do different than I will do other than just being 10,000 times better at this craft that is under discussion? Fine. So I have 1/10,000th of what they had. So I'm in, completely soaked. And believe you me, it's not like this sensation of you own the world instantly, suddenly for some weird reason that made me feel whatever, enlightened, highlighted, whatever. But it was the fact that technically speaking, it is it can be implemented manually. I can make it happen just by putting a few things together and adjusting just some basic things right here by way of an attitude. And I'm in. When I say I'm soaked, I mean I'm in. I'm in the whole of fame saturated with talent and capabilities that are monstrous, that are unstoppable, that are mighty and are influential, meaningful, and holding water as much as you can ever imagine and then some. What am I saying? I'm saying that exactly. So who is going to deny me that privilege or to deny me the right to think and feel this way? No one will, no one can. I cannot take anything of such away from you or anybody else for that sake. I wouldn't want to do it to begin with anyway. But let's say I wanted to. I can tell you that I wouldn't be able to. But the question becomes, how are you maintaining it and keeping it viable and available? And that fear, especially if it's the first time, the fear that you're going to leave the studio. This is never going to be anywhere to be found. It will just fade into the thin air, and you have no guarantee or reason to believe otherwise. So I found the solution for it. Why? Because I had the privilege to be able also to write poetry and to play music. And I wrote a poem. And in this poem, I highlighted in my own abstract, expressionistic, impressionistic style, way, technique, that which I found out. And I laid out a skeleton that, for the most part, I can only understand because it was gestures associated with some minor capability of photographic memory. And also played a pattern on my drums that I can just kind of show you. The rhythmically will be a pattern, but a pattern that I can repeat over and over again any given day and instantly, just like now again. Anyway, so you have that. You have the poem that you wrote by way of descriptive skeleton. I left the studio, and ever since, it's almost like you ride from East Hampton to Manhattan, and let's say if you're driving your car and suddenly you want to go to the bathroom, there's always like a moment of. So when you're on the jitney, you say, thank God, there's a bathroom here. And guess what? 99% of the time, you never go to use the bathroom, and that's a known fact, actually. So we want to say, okay, you know what? This is preventing us from needing to go to the bathroom. I don't know. This is the association. Oh my God! Wait a second. Wait. Let me see. Okay, let's just say that we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday and as much as we're here this Friday. Thank you for your patience, by the way. March 1st, year 2024, here with the Halolo Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi, continuing with the tradition of public access. And we're here. And there's a show, a group show. It's called Leverage. And it's taking place now through April 7th. And we have Josephine Worcesterchak, Joyce Raimondo, Fan Yu Lin, Liz Sloan, Teresa Lawler, Ellen Colcord, and we have also, did I say Liz Sloan? Yes, and I said Ellen Colcord, and I said, and then Ava Rado. And that's going to be through April 7th, and the opening will be March 9th. And there's going to be a huge event here during the day. So we're going to be like doing the opening from 12 to 7, Saturday, March 9th. See you then. Thank you for your patience.